Hello, today we will be going over all the books I have read in 2022 and reviewing them, and giving a little bit of a synopsis of my thoughts on them. Just a brief clarification on my star ratings. 5 is I loved it, 4 is I liked it, 3 it was okay. I usually don't go below that, but like 2 is like didn't like it, 1 is like I hated it. And I do have all my books off screen, so that's what I'll be looking at. And I'm trying to get all the authors' names pronounced right, but if I mispronounce a name, don't crucify me. And I will be doing this in like sections, so we're going to start with the books I read in January. So the first book I read in January is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. It is about Alicia, who is a famous painter who is married to an in-demand photographer. One evening, she shoots him 5 times, and then she never talks ever again. There is a psychotherapist named Theo who's determined to get her to speak again. So when I read this, I gave it 4 stars, which I liked it, but when I was going back and writing like my review for it for this video, I couldn't really remember much about it. I know that there was like some twists and turns, but overall kind of forgettable. Then I read Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. This is about Jane, who is struggling her career, her boyfriend, her friends, and her eating disorder. Her sister June has a finance career and is doing well besides her cancer diagnosis. They have to live together and they have nothing in common. I gave this 5 stars. It really reminded me of like my own sisters. I have 2 older sisters and how I would do anything for them. So this story is really interesting, getting into like the sister relationship, and I really enjoyed it. Then I read Educated by Tara Westover. Tara was raised in a family that were survivalists, home remedies for any injury, and violent brother. Tara started teaching herself more and went on to study at BYU and Harvard. So this is actually a memoir by Tara Westover about her own family. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed reading about the author and overcoming her obstacles to obtain an education. I did think that there were some things I wish she would have went more in depth on about like her family's beliefs and kind of what they were trying to survive from. She kind of went into it, but not a whole lot. Then I read Fault Lines by Emily Itami. Mizuki is a housewife with 2 kids and a husband who ignores her. She meets a man and starts an affair and has to choose one of her lives. So I gave this 4 stars at the time. It drew me in with the description, and it was really like descriptive writing, a very insightful look into like motherhood and being a wife. So at the time, I really did like it. Then I read Sabrina and Karina, which is short stories by Kali Fajardo Anstein. These are stories centered around Latinas and in the American West. Topics include ancestry, heritage, sex work, and gentrification. I give this 5 stars. It's very carefully crafted stories, and they definitely leave an impact when you read it. Every short story is a little bit different, but they all have that theme of being in like the American West and with Latinx characters. Then this next book I own. So then I read The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This is about Idlewild Hall and is a place for castaway girls. 4 roommates whisper rumors that the building is haunted until one of them is killed. Years later, the killed girl's sister is trying to figure out what went wrong. So at the time I rated this book, I think I gave it 4, but then I kept thinking about it. So it's more on the 4.5 range for me. It's very spooky, and it definitely left me waiting for the reveal of what was gonna happen. And I picked this up either I know I showed it in a haul that I had, so I'm glad I own this book now. And any other book I got through the library that I'm not like showing off, I just read it through the library. Then I read The Bookshop of Second Chances by Jackie Fraser. Thea has been left by her husband to her best friend and let go from her office job. Her great uncle leaves her his house and his large book collection. She meets a bookseller who's a little gruff. New life is as complicated as the old one. Should she stay at the place or should she leave? I give this 3 stars because it was fine. It was an okay story. It was a little basic and a little forgettable. Then I read The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. This is about Britta, who works for a lifestyle website, and she's tasked with trying out a new fitness app with personal coaching. She is matched with one of the founders to do the coaching, and a spark ignites between them, friendship or more. I gave this 4 stars. It was a very fun, like, body positive romance. I thought it was kind of like a fresh take on the romance genre. Then I read They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is a service that can now tell people when they will die. Mateo and Rufus both get the news and decide to hang out together on their last day of Earth. I give this 4 stars. It was good, but I don't think it was as good as the hype. Ooh, don't crucify me. Also, I don't like how it's kind of like a spoiler that they both die. Like, I'd rather that be like a mystery or something. Anyway. Then the last book in January I read was I Thought You Said This Would Work by Anne Wertz Garvin. This is about 2 old friends, now enemies, who are forced to road trip together for their mutual friend and have adventures along the way. I gave this 4 stars. It is a sweet book about old friends, like finding their friendship again. It is like older women too, an older woman perspective, and I always enjoy reading that. So those are all the books I read in January. Now to the books I read in February, starting out with If I Never Met You by Vari McFarlane. Lori's ex broke up with her and is now already having a baby with someone else, and Jamie is not respected since he is seen as a player. They team up to fake date. So I give this 3 stars because I think the fake dating trope is getting old to me. I think I read a lot last year, so like reading it this year, I was just kind of like, old news. Then I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. Stella is autistic and thinks analytically, so when she decides to start dating, she wants practice. She hires Michael, who is an escort, to teach her all she needs to know, and they start to fall in love. I gave this 3 stars as well. It was alright, but I didn't really care for the plot. I just thought it was very like Pretty Woman-esque, and I don't know if that is applicable to real life, maybe. Then I read The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This is about Kai, who's autistic and avoids relationships until his mother goes to Vietnam to find him a bride. Esme thinks this opportunity will be great for her, but it's hard to get Kai to open up. I did give this 4 stars. I didn't love the plot, but I enjoyed the story and the relationship more in this one than in the first one. Also with this one is like, you're like arranged marriage. I know it's different with different cultures, so I just was like, I don't know if I particularly loved it, but it was interesting. And then I read The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. So all these are actually kind of like connected. And the one I wanted to read was The Heart Principle, but I felt weird not reading the first 2. So I was like, well, let me read the first 2 so I can read the one I really want to read, The Heart Principle. The Heart Principle is about Anna, who is burnt out and recently broken up with, so she decides to go on a one-night stand with Quan, who is a motorcycle tattoo type of guy. I gave this 4 stars. This was my favorite one, which I kind of predicted from reading the description. And I don't know, it was just kind of a interesting series. Every single one of the books has like a focus on autism, which is kind of interesting to read about and gives you different perspective to look into. Then I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This is about Adam and Amelia, and they're on a weekend away, but Adam has face blindness and one of them is lying. I gave this 5 stars because this book had me shook. I was reading it and something happened and I was like, hold on, what just happened? I had to reevaluate my whole life. I would really suggest it. And then I read The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. This is about Sophie, and she's walking near a boarding school when she discovers a sign that says "Dig Here." A cold case for a missing 19-year-old girl is not cold anymore. I did give this 4 stars. It's an interesting mystery, and it's kind of like a little scavenger hunt at the beginning. And you're like kind of searching for more clues. But I will say, now looking back, it is a little forgettable because I don't really remember who the killer was or anything like that. So those are all the books I read in February. On to my March books, best month of the year, my birthday month. Anyway, I read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about Lauren and Ryan, and they reach a breaking point in their marriage and decide to take a year off with no contacts in the hope that they fall in love again. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't love the plot again, but I thought it was an interesting storyline. I've been going through like all the Taylor Jenkins Reid books pretty much, so it was just kind of like one to check off. I did like it, but the plot was a little weird. I'm like, I would not take a year away from my husband, even if we were having problems. You know, I love that man too much. Then I read So We Can Glow, Stories by Lisa Cross Smith. This is like just short stories from her that are just kind of fun or sad or both. It's hard to give a description overall because all the short stories are so different. I gave it 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. Then I read The Happy Ever After Playlist by Abby Jimenez. Sloane has lost her fiance 2 years ago and recently rescued a dog on the street. The dog's owner finally contacts her and they start to flirt. What will happen when they meet in person? I gave it 4 stars. It was very cute, and all the songs listed were really fun too, because some of the songs I actually listened to myself, so it was kind of cool to see them in the book. Then I read Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. Vanessa quit her job to travel the world and has a YouTube channel dedicated to sharing that. When she gains custody of her niece, she is struggling. Her next door neighbor, Adrian, is tired of hearing the baby cry and offers help. I gave it 4 stars. It is very sweet, but kind of forgettable. Those 2 books are also part of a trilogy, but the first book, I read the description and I was like, not for me. Maybe I would like it now, but I passed on it then. Then I read The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund Broca. And the co-writers are writing a book about co-writers. Very meta. So co-writers Katrina and Nathan were highly sought after until their partnership ended on bad terms. Now back together, they have to face crossroads in a personal and professional lives. I gave this 4 stars because they had a lot of miscommunication, and they're writers. I'm like, hello, you need to communicate better. They were communicating through their books. I'm like, communicate face to face. But it was still a good story. Then I reread Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I reread this for a book club that I'm not part of anymore. It was through my work, but it kind of fell apart. But Chanel, this is a memoir. Chanel was assaulted outside of a party, and her attacker only received 6 months jail time. And the story goes over the whole event and how Chanel processed everything. Like I said, it was my second time reading this book. So the first time I was just like really blown away. It still gets 5 stars. But this time I really was like blown away by the language and how she went through everything and was able to write about it in such a unique perspective. I highly recommend this book. Then I read The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. Chrissy is 8 years old when she kills a boy. She never gets attention as a child. So 20 years later, Chrissy is hiding under a new name and receiving threatening phone calls from someone who knows her past. I gave this 4 stars because it is very creepy. I didn't love the fact that the main character was a child and killed another child. It was very felt wrong to read. You learn more about the character and why she kills somebody, and it's a very sad story, but it is very interesting thriller. Then I read Kind of Cursed by Stephanie Fournette. Millie is responsible for raising her brothers and sisters now that her parents are gone. She has shut herself down from any romantic interest until she meets the man who will be fixing her house. I give this 4 stars. It was cute, but I didn't love like all the aspects of it. Some of it just felt like a little weird and a little just like off to me, but I thought it was cute at the time. Then I read The Searcher by Tana French. This is about a retired detective who moves to Ireland to fix up a cottage and relax. When a child comes to him for help finding their sibling, he can't say no. I actually didn't give this a rating at the time, but I would say upon memory, it's like between 3 and 4 stars because it's kind of forgettable, but I liked it at the time. Then I reread Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is about a nomadic group of actors after a pandemic, and they fight against a mysterious prophet. And I reread this because I wanted to watch the short series on HBO so I could compare it. Obviously, the book is better. The series on HBO isn't bad. It just wasn't like my cup of tea necessarily. Then I also reread Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, again, to prepare for the movie that came out. This is about Kaya, who seemingly raises herself in the marsh and only has a few ties to the community. She is tried for the murder of one man who is close to her. So, I really... Oh, did I say the stars for Station 11? I don't think I did. Station 11 is 5. This is a 5 as well. I know not a lot of people really like this book now because of like stuff that's come out about the author, but I'm just gonna take away the author and say without the author, I still really love this book. I still really enjoy like the description of nature and the character itself. The movie, you know, it wasn't the best, but you know, I think they did a good job with what they had. It just felt like it was missing something. I don't know, it wasn't all the way there for me. Anyway, those are all the books I read in March. All right, on to my April books. So starting with The Twilight Wife by AJ Banner. Kyra has lost her memory in a diving accident and her husband tries to help her remember. Kyra starts to have memories and questions what is real. So I give this 4 stars because I'm kind of tired of like memory loss tropes. It felt like a very familiar story. I did like the setting of the story because it is like on an island. So that was a little unique, but overall kind of just like meh. Then I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. April stumbles on a massive sculpture and makes a video of it. The video becomes viral and everyone is trying to figure out where the sculpture came from and why everyone is starting to have the same dream. I gave this 3 stars. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people really enjoy this book, but I just thought it was okay because I really thought the main character was annoying. I was just like not rooting for her. I didn't care about her. I had no stake in the story. I didn't think she was likable. I thought the plot was interesting, but I kind of wish there was maybe more to it. I think people should check it out though. So yeah. Then I read The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is about Shay, who has worked in public radio for a decade, but she's clashing with new coworker Dominic, who acts like he knows it all. Shay comes up with a podcast idea about 2 exes rehashing their relationship over the air and giving out advice. What happens when fake exes start to like each other? I gave this 5 stars because I thought it was super cute. I read it with a friend and we would like message each other about what was going on in the book. And I don't know if that added to the story, but I was eating it up. And I really like this author. You'll see a bunch of books from her throughout the video. Highly recommend this one. Then I read The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This is about Tiffy and Leon who share a room since they work opposite shifts of each other and they leave notes for each other throughout the day and they've never met. And what if they start to like each other through these notes? I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was very cute, and I loved all of like the little notes to each other. And this is actually being turned into either a movie or a TV show, which I'm really excited to watch because I really liked this book. I thought it was cute. It's not really realistic, but I still liked it. Then I read Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is what I would call like a sliding doors book, if you've ever seen that movie. So it's kind of like 2 variations of a story happening at the same time. It's about Hannah and how her life unfolds in 2 very different ways. And let me tell you, I loved this book so much. This was what kind of turned my mind around about Taylor Jenkins Reid, because I always just thought was like, she's just okay. But this book, I was like, this is the one. And thank you to my friend for recommending this one. So those were all my April books. On to May. I first read Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Rowan and Neil have constantly fought to be best in high school. Now on their last day, they are trying to win a senior class game that takes them all over the city by teaming up together. 5 stars for this one. Rachel Lynn Solomon, you hit it out of the park again. This is like enemies to lovers type trope in the last day of high school, like going over what happened with their like friendship and why they were enemies. It was a good one. Then I read His and Hers by Alice Feeney. Anna is reluctant to cover a murder case for her TV station. Detective Jack is suspicious of her involvement and his own ties to the murder. I give this 4 stars because it felt a little bit all over the place. I know Alice Feeney likes to do like twists, but I didn't really feel like it worked well in this one. But other people really enjoyed it. So then I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Nora is the other girl in most romances, the girl who gets left. Her sister drags her to a small town to try to convince her to see herself as the heroine. Nora keeps bumping into Charlie, who is an editor from home, who butts heads with her. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was really cute, and it was interesting, the main character, because she's like the girl that, you know, like the Hallmark movie, like the mean ex-girlfriend that always gets left behind. She's kind of like that girl, but she's not that mean, so it was kind of cool. And it was like an enemies to lovers type perspective as well. Then I read The Wedding Date by Jasmine Gilroy. Drew and Alexa get stuck in an elevator together, and Drew needs a date to a wedding, but they start to have fun meeting up in their own cities to help each other out. I gave this 3 stars because it was a fake dating trope again, and I was just like, it was okay. I liked it at the beginning, maybe not the end of the book. Then I read Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. This is a memoir from the author talking about her incarcerated father and unwanted attention from men when she was young, and it takes her, the story goes from like when she was little all the way to when she is an adult now. And she's actually an Indiana author where I live, so I thought that was really cool. I gave it 4 stars. It was an interesting story and perspective, and I would really suggest reading that one. Then I read The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. June has to step out of her shell when her library is faced with closure. With some help from an unlikely group of friends, they push to save the library. I gave this 4 stars. It was like a really simple and sweet, easy story to read. I always like books about books, so I thought it was a cute one. Then I read Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Ari is a weather girl who's tired of hearing her bosses fight. She partners up with her coworker Russell to try and parent trap their bosses. They start to get close, and it also shows her own struggles with mental health. I give this 4 stars because as the description, it seems like a lot is going on. So, you know, like Ari has her mental health problems, Russell has a daughter, their bosses are exes, and they're trying to parent trap them back together. It's a lot going on, but I thought it was cute, but maybe not my favorite from Rachel Lynn Solomon. Then I read Head Over Heels by Hannah Orenstein. Avery missed out on the Olympics, but now she is helping train a new student with her crush, Ryan. and her abusive ex-coach still gets in her head when she's coaching other people. I give this 3 stars because the scandal was a little too underdeveloped, especially since it felt like it was based on the real gymnastics scandal that happened. So it just felt like a little underdeveloped in that aspect. So those are all the books I read in May. All right, on to the June books. Starting with The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. A man meets a woman in an airport and jokes about killing his cheating wife, and the woman agrees to help. This is 4 stars for me because I loved what happens like halfway through the book, but I would say the plot does kind of get away from itself towards the end of the book, because at the beginning it like hooks you in and you're like yes, but at the end you're just kind of like okay. But it was a good one. I would suggest reading it. Then I read Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman. This is a series of poems from Amanda Gorman. I gave it 4 stars. It's mainly about like the pandemic and also just like life skills. If you don't know, Amanda Gorman is the poet who kind of went viral for reading at the inauguration. When was that? A few years ago. So it was kind of cool to read more of her work. Then I read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Depressed and trying to see possibilities, Nora is able to try on lives that she could have had. I give this 4 stars. It wasn't like my favorite version of this type of book of like going through your life and trying out different things. Maybe because I didn't really care for the main character, but you know, I don't think it also was worth the hype. But overall, it was okay. I read Only When It's Us by Chloe Lees. Writer is newly deaf and texts to get by. And Willa is fiery and mad that writer practically ignored her when she asked for help in class. What happens when they get partnered together for a project? I gave this 3 stars. It's kind of like a cute little like enemies to lovers type story, but they keep having like these nicknames throughout the book that I'm just like, just call each other's names. I don't know. It's a little annoying. I guess it's like when you're in the honeymoon phase, you use annoying names, but it got a little out of hand. Then I read Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez. Darcy runs a secret advice locker in school. She gets caught by Alex, who wants advice on getting his girlfriend back. Darcy is not great at love since she is secretly pining for her best friend. I gave this 4 stars. I also read this with a friend and we texted back and forth, so it was kind of fun to talk about the book. It's a cute concept, but I don't really care for the story that much. Maybe since it was like high school based, I don't typically like those stories. Then I read An Unwanted Guest by Cherie Lapina. In a remote hotel, there is a murder and the power goes out. More mystery happens and only one thing can be explained. There is an unwanted guest. I gave this 4 stars because there are a lot of characters in this book, so it's hard to keep track of everyone. But it is very spooky. I like how it's like set in like snowy type atmosphere, and they're all in this like cozy hotel and there's a lot going on in it. Then I read See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Barrett is hoping college is a fresh start after a rough go in high school. Her first day is not shaping up. She runs into Miles, who's being rude, and sets fire to a friend. When she wakes up the next day, she discovers it is actually yesterday. Miles is stuck too. Can they get out? This is kind of like a time loop book set in college, and I gave it 5 stars because I loved it. I don't know what it is about like time loops, but I love them. It's a good trope to me, unless I get tired of it. You know, you never know what could happen. Then I read Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard. Sadie is having a bad time. She gets fired after fighting with her boss about being passed over for a promotion. She gets wasted with her friends and mixes up a dating app with a roommate app. She goes on what she thinks is a date with Jack and finds a dirt cheap room. Maybe he has more to offer as well. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was very cute. It made me smile. It was a little cheesy wheezy, but you know, sometimes you need that. Then I read Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. Gretel is trying to figure out what happened to her mother in the final winter that her mother left her to fend on her own. I gave this, honestly, I should probably change my star rating on this. I gave it 3 stars at the time, but probably a 2 because I was just confused as all get out about this book. We read it for like a book club that like me and my family are part of, and I don't know, it wasn't for me. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. And then I read By the Book by Jasmine Guillory. Isabel is in a publishing company and is hoping to get promoted, and to impress her boss, she tries to help push an author to finish his memoir. As she stays around the author longer, she is surprised he isn't a mean person that he is laid out to be. I give this 4 stars. It is actually like in partnership with Disney, and it's like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but with like a modern spin. It's very like PG romance if you're interested, because some of the other romances are a little spicy. But this one is with Disney, so it's very relaxed. But it was a cute story. Those are all the books I read in June. All right, on to our July books. I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Naomi gets a weird letter from her cousin and goes to her house to see what is happening. As she stays there, more and more things begin to happen to her and to the house. I give this 4 stars. This is a very eerie book, and it has definitely like vivid imagery. I didn't really like it as much as most people liked it, but I thought it was an interesting read. Then I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. This is about a knockoff IKEA store that is being haunted by something, and a group of the associates stay after close to investigate what it is. I give this 3 stars. It is very vivid imagery again, and just a really weird story, but the book itself is really cool. I'll put a picture of it on the screen, obviously, but kind of looks like a IKEA catalog almost, so it was really interesting to look at that. Then I read Swimming Lessons by Claire Fuller. Ingrid writes letters to her husband about their marriage and hides them in books around the house. She disappears, and 12 years later, her daughter is still looking for her. I gave this 5 stars because I just really was invested in the story. I really felt like the emotions of the characters. It really made me emotional, and I actually like wrote a review on Goodreads, and the author replied to it, so that was really cool. Then I read The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. In the 70s, small town Oregon was shaken by a lady killer murders. 2 men murdered with notes left behind. Beth Greer was the main suspect, but was acquitted and has been quietly isolated until a true crime fan, Shea, gets her to agree to an interview. Did Beth get away with the murder, or is there more to the story? I gave this 4 stars. It is a very interesting story. I guess at the time I said it was predictable. I honestly forget what happens, so maybe it wasn't predictable. But I really do enjoy the eeriness of Simone St. James books. She definitely writes in a very like eerie style that is really unique to her. Then I read Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This is about multiple timelines intersecting, and a character is trying to figure out if everything is a simulation or not. I give this 4 stars. This is beautiful writing. I think she has a very unique writing style as well. The story is interesting, but I didn't really think it was like fulfilling, if you know what I mean. Then I actually picked this up at a library book sale. Love Unscripted by Owen Nichols. This is about Nick and Ellie, and they meet on election night in 2008, but 4 years later they are split up. Nick is now going through his memories to see what went wrong. I gave this 3 stars. Maybe that's why the library took it out of circulation. No, I'm just kidding. And it's kind of like a split story with the night that they met and then where they are now. The main character to me wasn't very likable. And kind of emotionally withdrawn for no real reason. So, you know, I might have to donate this book somewhere, like a little free library or something. Then I read Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kar Jaswal. Nikki is East meets West when she leaves her family house to live above a bar. She starts to teach an English class in a community center, and the widows want to do more than learn to read and write. They want to tell stories that would shake the core of proper women. I gave this 4 stars because it's very interesting perspectives and story. The murder mystery was not needed, and did not add much to the book. So, you know, should have just kept to the stories. We didn't need the murder, you know, just kept to the stories. I read The XX by Erin Sterling. Vivian Jones nursed her broken heart like any young witch would, with vodka and a joke spell on her ex, Reese. Reese comes back to town 9 years later and is cursed with bad luck. Vivian and Reese have to work together to stop the curse from spreading to the whole town. I gave this 3 stars. I thought it could have been spookier considering like the subject matter and the setting. And I didn't really like necessarily care for the characters, and I was just like, it was like another book that was like the hype was more than what the book was. Then I read All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood. Wavy is 8 years old and knows not to trust most people as a daughter to a meth dealer and addict. She witnesses a crash by her father's friend Kellen, who is an ex-con, and what follows is the love story between them. 2 stars. This was like really weird book to read because the character's like 8 years old and falling in love with a man like twice her age. Kind of like child predation is not something I want to read about. But I finished the book, again, you know, because I don't know why I finished. I probably should have just stopped. But I followed it up with a good one. So then I read Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. Upon her death, a mother leaves behind an audio recording and a black cake for 2 siblings to have when the time is right. The mother tells the story of a woman who's forced to flee home and what happened after. I loved this book, 5 stars. I really enjoyed the character's backstory and all that she went through. I liked the mother's part more than like the siblings part, but it was a really interesting book, and I think it actually came out this year, so highly suggest that one. Then I read Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. A woman is in a coma but can hear what is happening around her and is trying to remember how she exactly ended up in the coma. I gave this 4 stars. I didn't love the twist in this story. It was building up for something else, but kind of it was a letdown what really happened in the story. But I do enjoy an Alice Feeney book. Then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. A cafe has an ability to let people go back in time, but there are numerous rules to follow, and you have to come back before the coffee gets cold. I give this 3 stars. This is another one that was like, everybody was hyping it up, but it was kind of a letdown. The story is split up into like 4 sections, and some of them are more compelling than the other sections. It can also be very repetitive because I swear in each section it goes over the rules again. I'm like, we know the rules as the reader. We don't need to be reminded of the rules. But it was okay. So those are all the books I read in July. All right, on to August. I read The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This is about a rundown roadside motel, and it is hiding secrets. And a young woman is trying to find out what happened to her aunt who worked there 35 years before she did. I give it 3 stars. Again, Simone St. James, definitely the spooky, eerie vibes, which I like, but the reveal and the plot, it was just kind of like all over the place. I didn't really like it that much. Then I read Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. Annie was abducted from an open house she was hosting as a realtor and tells the story of what happened to her in a remote mountain cabin and the events after. I give this 4 stars. It's a very interesting layout with the therapy sessions and then versus the telling of the story of what happened. It's a little long-winded, but it kept me intrigued the whole time, and I really do enjoy Chevy Stevens' writing. Then I read A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. Harper is a top student in an oral residency program, and Dan is a legacy student when they crash into each other, literally. The two set out to be just friends, but their chemistry says otherwise. I give this 4 stars. It was cute, but it was a little overwhelming because one of the main characters has anxiety, and they just like talk about it a lot, and it made me anxious with her anxiousness. Anyway, I thought it was cute. Then I read The Good Lie by A.R. Torre. 6 teens were murdered and one escaped from the horror and names a teacher at his school as the perpetrator. One of the teens' father is a lawyer and doesn't believe that the teacher is guilty and defends him and asks Dr. Gwen Moore, an expert on killers, for a profile to prove he is right. I give this 4 stars. Very mysterious story, as you can tell by the description, and it was kind of interesting how the main character was a psychiatrist. It gives you a different perspective into the killer's mindset. Then I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. Percy escapes to the lake every summer and grows a friendship with Sam, but a decade later returns to attend Sam's funeral and comes to terms with what happened between them. I gave this 4 stars. The dual storyline is very interesting and full of depth, and I really liked the setting as well. Then I read This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. On her 40th birthday, Alice's life is not what she imagines. With her father sick, she stumbles back to her 16th birthday and has a new perspective on her life and her father's life. I give this 4 stars. It's like a time travel trope again, which y'all know I enjoy. Then I read Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. A Chinese American family is living in the 1970s and they're grieving the loss of their daughter and looking at how they ended up where they are. I give this 4 stars. It's a very sad book, but it is also a very insightful look into family relationships and into grief. Then I read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. Hannah is a bodyguard that is usually in the background, but when Jack needs someone to protect him from a stalker in his hometown, he wants her to pretend to be his girlfriend. 3 stars for this one. A little basic. You know, the fake dating trope again. I'm done. I can't read fake dating tropes anymore. I need to stop. I didn't think it was well done either because it was just, I don't know. And then at the ending, this is probably a spoiler. So if you don't want to know the spoiler, I guess skip a little bit forward. But they get married and they had like celebrities at their wedding, like real celebrity names. No, if you're having a fake celebrity, you need to have fake celebrities, like weird names, not real celebrity names in there. I don't know. That's like a nitpick from me. Then I read Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. Lily grew up the daughter of a treasure hunter and uses her dad's old journals to lead tourists on adventures in Utah. Leo takes one of these adventures and is surprised to see his old love leading it. I gave it 3 stars because I felt like it was lacking in the romance section, but it was a good adventure story. It was very interesting. A lot of what was going on. Then I read the short story, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. Every year, the town holds a lottery amongst all the families, but this is a lottery no one wants to win. I gave it 4 stars because I would like to read a longer version of this, and the ending was spoiled by Goodreads when I was reading the description, so I kind of already knew what was going to happen, so kind of was like, eh. Then I read The Magpie by Elizabeth Day. This is talking about desperation to have a child with interesting family dynamics. It's hard to give a description for this book without giving much away, so I don't want to, but I did give it 4 stars. The story did catch me by surprise, but the aftermath of it was very slow and not as fulfilling, and like I said, it's kind of hard to describe, so I don't want to give too much away, but I would say give it a read. Then I read The Trouble with Hating You by Sajini Patel. Leah is tricked by her parents into having dinner with someone they want to set her up with. She sneaks out unsuccessfully and runs right into Jay. At work a week later, she runs into him again, and he is the lawyer hired to save her company. Will they keep hating each other, or will their close contact show the reason their parents tried to set them up? I gave this 2 stars because I didn't think the characters were very likable, and they both said that they didn't want to get married, but at the end, they both said, another spoiler, at the end, they basically said that they were going to marry each other. I was like, what was the whole book for? What was all this? Anyway, the hate to love trope in this book was not well done, and I feel like it was very sudden and just not realistic, so I just wasn't feeling it in this one when I typically like that trope. So yeah, not for me. Then I read Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. This is centering on the bombing of Dresden. Billy Pilgrim's journey through time reflects our own fractured lives in the search for meaning. I gave this 5 stars. What can you say that hasn't been said about Slaughterhouse-Five and Kurt Vonnegut? It's a classic. It's inspiring. It's insightful. It's dark. It's funny. It's a lot of things. And it's a pretty short read too, so I would highly suggest reading this book. Then I read From the Jump by Lacey Walden. Liv is used to living her life in shoulds. She should be fit, should be financially responsible. When Liv starts to say no to things, she decides to join her group of friends on their trip to Africa. Getting closer to one of her friends, Lucas, comes with complications. I gave this 5 stars because I thought it was very cute and sweet, and I really liked how this book really focused on like the friends' dynamic with each other, which you don't get a lot in other romance type books, and the real focus was them on as a group, which I really appreciated. Then I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about 4 famous siblings who throw a party at the end of the summer, but over the course of 24 hours, their lives will change forever. I gave this 5 stars, and when I read the description of this book, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like it, but it really turned it around for me because it's like a deeper look into each of their lives, talking about their relationships with each other, talking about their relationship with their deadbeat dad, and let me tell you, it's accurate because as a person with a deadbeat dad, I feel that. Then I read 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. 9 strangers receive a list with their names on it in the mail. None of the 9 people have met each other and dismiss it as junk mail until bad things begin to happen to the people on the list. I gave it 4 stars because it's a very mysterious look into the reason why people are being killed one after another, but the payoff isn't there for me necessarily, and there are way too many characters for me to keep straight. I'm like, and some of the characters' names are kind of similar. I think they did that on purpose. Also, kind of felt like an Agatha Christie knockoff, so I was just kind of like, I liked it, but not all the way. Then I read The Love Connection by Denise Williams, which is actually a novella. It's about an airport pet groomer who meets her frequent flyer crush. I gave it 4 stars because it's cute and sweet, and obviously short. There's 2 other in this novella series that I've read, so you will see that. But those are all the books I read that month. All right, on to the books I read in September. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about reclusive Hollywood star who's ready to tell her truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. She chooses Monique Grant to tell her story, who is a lowly reporter, ruthless ambition, unexpected friendships, and great forbidden love. I give this 4 stars because it was a surprising story and a fun look into Hollywood, but it wasn't a necessarily good main character. And it also wasn't worth the hype for me, but I did enjoy the story overall, and it did catch me by surprise. Then I read The Sweetest Connection by Denise Williams. So this is one of the airport novellas. 2 best friends have 1 week to return a lost love letter found in an airport candy store and to work up the courage to confess their feelings for each other. I gave it 4 stars. It was a cute story about best friends in love with each other, aka that was me and my boo. So it kind of reminded me of that. Then I read Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall. Feminist movement has a glaring blind spot for women of color and don't focus on topics that are important in society, such as food insecurity, quality education, safe neighborhoods, living wage, and more. It was very thought-provoking. It's a nonfiction book. I gave it 4 stars. It filled with a lot of information. Not necessarily my favorite, but I liked it overall. It's hard for me to love a nonfiction book. Then I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. In her 20s, Emma marries her high school sweetheart Jesse, and they build a life full of travel far away from the expectations of their family. On their first wedding anniversary, Jesse goes missing after a helicopter crash and is presumed dead. Emma moves home and grieves his loss and is moving on slowly. She runs into an old friend, Sam, and falls in love again. Now engaged years later, she finds out Jesse is alive. Who is her one true love? And what does it mean to love truly? 5 freaking stars. The sadness, the joy, the emotional roller coaster that this book took me on. I was texting my friend because she had read this book. I was like, tell me everything works out. Because I was stressing. Because I just didn't know what was going to happen. It made me feel all the feels. And I really did love it. Then I read The Layover by Lacey Walden. After 10 years being a flight attendant, Ava is ready to hang up her wings to put down roots with her reliable fiance. On her last flight, she is paired with cocky Jack, who she holds a grudge against due to her most humiliating night of her life. When their plane encounters problems and they're stuck for longer than anticipated, she starts to second guess her decisions about life and Jack. I gave this 3 stars because it was just very meh. Also, she is engaged, as the description says. The next minute, she thirsting over this coworker she hated. No, this is not how we do enemies to lovers. No, I did not like that. Anyway, that was just a personal nitpick again. Then I read Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. Macy is settling into her routine of being a pediatric doctor and getting engaged to a financially stable older man. She runs into her first love, Elliot. All her push-down feelings begin to bloom. Between then and now storyline shows what happened to them the first time and what will happen now. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a cute story about friends to lovers. But again, I don't know why I kept reading these books. She's engaged. Remember, she's engaged and actively flirting with somebody else. And she's talking to her fiance about her old friend. And he doesn't even really seem to care. I'm just like, what is happening? Yeah, it was an interesting one. Then I read You by Carolyn Kepnes. When an inspiring writer comes into Joe Goldberg's bookstore, he Googles the name on her credit card. There's only one Guinevere Beck in New York City, and her social media is all public. As Joe stalks Beck, he also orchestrates events to make them closer together. I gave this 4 stars, a very, very creepy look into the mind of a stalker. But it's also weird because you kind of fall into his charm too, which is ooh, I don't like that. But that makes it a good book, right? Because she's trying her hardest. Then I read The Misconnection by Denise Williams. This is the last airport novella. This is about 2 strangers who share a romantic night together only to discover months later they're professional rivals. I give this 4 stars. It was a cute, meet cute story, and then also enemies to lovers story. All of them were pretty short stories. I think they were all about 150 to 200 pages, so really easy to read. Then I read Turn of Mind by Alice LaPlante. Dr. Jennifer White is the main suspect when her best friend turns up dead with 4 fingers surgically removed. She doesn't know if she did it either. Retired surgeon with dementia who clings to the bits of reality through anger, frustration, shame, and loss. I gave it 4 stars because the format of the book really threw me off, but I really did find this story compelling. Then I read We Are All Made of Stars by Rowan Coleman. Stella is a hospice nurse who works nights and helps write letters for her patients containing their final wishes, feelings, and thoughts, and delivers them after the patients pass away. She's going through her own feelings with the return of her husband from Afghanistan. I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was really beautiful. There were sad moments, there were hopeful moments. I really enjoyed the writing. I really enjoyed this story. Then I read The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. In an isolated college town, a freshman girl stumbles into her dorm room and falls asleep. In the morning, her roommate cannot wake her at all, and neither can the doctors. Then a second girl falls asleep, and then another. A panic takes hold of the town. Those infected are dreaming heightened dreams, but of what? I gave this 5 stars. It's a very descriptive book, very immersive scenery. I really liked the overall narrative of the book and what happens in the book. Then I read 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khalid Hosseini. Oh, I actually own this book. 1 second. Miriam is only 15 when she is sent to Kabul to marry an older, bitter man. 2 decades later, tragedy strikes Layla, who must leave her home and join Miriam's unhappy household. Layla and Miriam's bond grows as the Taliban rule over Afghanistan takes place. I gave this 4 stars. It's definitely an interesting look into the family dynamics and also the women lifting each other up. Then I reread the authoritative Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson. Calvin's just a little boy and goes on adventures with his stuffed tiger Hobbes, going on all kinds of crazy adventures. I love Calvin and Hobbes. It's classic. It's easy to read. It's fun. Colors. It goes over like every season. I have also some other Calvin and Hobbes books as well. So that's always a good one to refer back to. Then I read Locked Inside by Nancy Werlin. As the daughter of an inspirational singer-author, Marnie stands to inherit great wealth. She has to live in a boarding school until she's old enough to be alone. She endures her weight by escaping to an online fantasy game. When Marnie is kidnapped by someone claiming to be her sister, will her online skills translate to real life? I give this 4 stars because, let me tell you, me and my sister Kayla, we quote this book all the time. It's like a YA classic to us. It's not necessarily the best, but we enjoy it. Then I read Dangerous Prayers because following Jesus was never meant to be safe by Craig Groeschel. This is about going deeper into your prayer life by breaking down 3 prayers that can transform your life. I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars because it's a very challenging, eye-opening look into the faith life. Also really breaks down prayers that you can pray that will definitely transform your relationship with Christ. So I really enjoyed that book. Then I read With Love from London by Sarah Geo. A librarian inherits a bookshop from her estranged mother, leading her halfway across the world on a journey of self-discovery. I gave this 4 stars. It was a cute, cozy story. The mom character kind of comes in halfway through the book, which I didn't necessarily love, but overall, I thought it was a pretty cute one. Then I read The Other Side, a memoir by Lacey M. Johnson. The author was held in a soundproof room that her ex rented and built for the purpose of raping and killing her. Her escape and aftermath go over violence against women. I give this 4 stars. It's a very resilient story that shows the trauma of sexual assault. The layout of the book wasn't necessarily my favorite part of it, but overall I thought it was a very important story to share. So those are all the books I read in September. All right, our October books. Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. So if you watch my channel, you'll see I did a little hammock reading vlog for this book. But it's set over the one school year in 1986, the story of two misfits who fall in love despite their differences in race and background. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I didn't really love the description of the characters or the characters themselves. I just thought it was a very meh book. But, you know, that's okay. Then I read The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Before he disappears, Owen slips his wife Hannah a note. Protect her. Hannah knows it's about Owen's daughter Bailey. FBI and U.S. Marshals show up shortly after Owen is gone, and Hannah realizes there's more to her husband than she ever realized. Give this 4 stars. The beginning really had me, but the reveal at the end lost me. I did enjoy seeing the relationship grow between Hannah and Bailey, but beyond that, I just thought it was all right. Then I read Hide by Kiersten White. The challenge: spend a week hiding in an abandoned amusement park and don't get caught. The prize is tempting. As people begin to disappear in different ways, the characters discover there might be a more sinister reason behind the competition. I gave this 4 stars because I really love the idea of the story, the setting of the story, but the motivations didn't really feel all the way fleshed out. I didn't really like the reveal at the end, but overall, the beginning of the book, it really had me. Then I read Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. Fresh out of rehab, Mallory takes a job in a wealthy suburb babysitting Teddy. Teddy is a typical kid who draws, but his drawings turn from sweet to sinister. Mallory begins to suspect that these drawings are from an unsolved murder from years ago. I gave this 3 stars. I liked the direction it was going, but again, the reveal was not as impactful as I wanted it to be, and it felt very thrown together. It was like, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And you're like, what? Come on. This is not what we're trying to do. Then I read Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. By the time Carrie retires from tennis, she is the best player in the world. 6 years after retirement, a new player takes her world record. At 37, she decides to come out of retirement and be coached by her father one last time to reclaim her record. I gave this 4 stars because I felt like it was a little slow to get into, and I wasn't really that interested in it, but the second half really grabbed me, and I was really invested in the characters. So, you know, hard to get into. Also, I'm not the biggest tennis person, so I was kind of just like, eh. Then I read Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. Ansel Parker is scheduled to die in 12 hours. He wants to be understood and celebrated. Through a look on the women surrounding him, we learn about him and his crimes. I give this 5 stars. It's very insightful writing, very descriptive. It pulls you right in. You feel like these characters are real, honestly. And it's a very interesting look at the execution, the women. It's a good one. Then I read The Secrets She Keeps by Michael Robotham. Agatha is pregnant and works part-time stocking shelves at the grocery store. She looks forward to seeing Megan, a chic pregnant customer whose lifestyle dazzles her. They create a friendship, and it will change the course of their lives forever. I gave this 4 stars because it's a very interesting dynamic about motherhood, grief, and the so-called perfect life. I will say that we read this with my family book club. I called the ending, but nobody else really did. But I don't know, maybe I just have a better read on these things. No, I'm just kidding. Then I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Friends since childhood. They borrow money, beg favors, and before even graduating, they have created their first video game. Overnight, the world is theirs. Not at even 25 years old, Sam and Sadie are brilliant, successful, and rich, but these qualities won't protect them from their own creative ambitions or the betrayals of their heart. I give this a 4.5. I think it was a little long for the subject matter, but I really enjoyed the experimental chapters, the sad moments, the friendship. I really enjoyed the overall subject matter. Just thought it was a little bit long. Then I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. Hazel is the definition of her own person who most see as wild. Josh is pretty straight and narrow. After meeting in college and having some mishaps, they run into each other again 10 years down the line. Hazel deems herself as undateable, and Josh has a girlfriend anyway, so they become friends. When Josh is single and Hazel thinks he's ready to date again, they try and set each other up on group dates, but they seem more interested in each other than the other people. I gave this 4 stars. It's a very cute story. I really did like it. I hate the title. Is it bad to say that the title makes it a lesser book for me? If so, that's my opinion, and I can't do anything about it. So those are all the books I read in October. All right, on to my books I read in November. I started with The Mutual Friend by Carter Bays. This is set in New York City. It's a large cast of characters whose lives intersect, and they intersect in real life and in their online lives, and they navigate love, life, loss, and ambition and spirituality. I gave this book 4 stars. If you know who Carter Bays is, you're probably a fan of How I Met Your Mother. And I was a fan of How I Met Your Mother until the finale, but that's for a different video. But obviously I was interested in this plot because of Carter Bays, and I think this is his first book, perhaps. It is a long book. I think it ended up being about 600 pages on the Kindle, so kind of long. And I was also worried about the ending the whole time because of my trauma with How I Met Your Mother. But overall, I really did enjoy the book. There were some experimental chapters, like ones with like all chat type ones. So those were really cool. I would recommend this book. I can't really remember all the details now, but overall, I did like it. Then I read A Season for Second Chances by Jenny Bayliss. This is about a charming, quirky seaside town that offers a recently separated restaurateur a fresh start and possibly a new lease on love. I gave this 4 stars. It was a very comfy and cute story, very seasonally appropriate. I did think it was a little long for the actual plot of the story, but I enjoyed it overall. Then I reread Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. The romantic clash between opinionated Elizabeth and her proud beau, Mr. Darcy, is a splendid performance of civilized sparring. I think that's what the back of the book says, you know? If you haven't heard of this book or read it, I don't know where you've been. It's definitely one of my favorites. 5 stars for me. I love reading this. This is maybe my 3rd or 4th reread. You can definitely see I've cracked the spine numerous times. The definitive enemies to lovers, even though I'm kind of over that trope, I still like Pride and Prejudice. Then I read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. After years of avoiding each other, Daisy's family is assembling for their Nana's 80th birthday on a tidal island. The family arrives, each of them harboring secrets. Then someone is found dead, and on each hour, another family member is found dead. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed this story. I kind of saw some things coming, but other things were kind of surprising. If you know Alice Feeney, then you know there's a twist. That's not really a spoiler because Alice Feeney always has a twist. I didn't particularly love the twist in this book. I don't know. I think it was interesting. It was definitely different for Alice Feeney. I think it was surprising. I did enjoy it. I did like the book. I wouldn't say I loved it. Then I read Night Crawling by Layla Motley. Kiera and her brother Marcus are scraping by in East Oakland. Both have dropped out of high school and their family is fractured by death in prison. Marcus clings to his dreams of being a rapper, and Kiera hunts for work to pay their rent and to keep the 9-year-old boy next door, abandoned by his mother, safe and fed. One night, a misunderstanding with a stranger turns into a job Kiera never imagined. I gave this book 5 stars. I loved the descriptive quality of this book, the imagery, the way it felt very like poetic, and the author I think is only like 19 years old. So just the way that she was able to write these characters, write what was happening, was so impressive. Definitely immersive. It was talking about a sad situation, but with such like beautiful language. So I would just highly recommend this book. I guess the author was inspired by events that happened previously, not actual true events, but well, kind of actual true events, but you know, she turned it into, you know, this book. Then I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Casey Fletcher is a recently widowed actress who is trying to escape a streak of bad press in her family's lake house in Vermont. Armed with a pair of binoculars and alcohol, she spies on the Royces across the lake. When she saves Catherine Royce from drowning, she learns more about the couple and secrets they have. When Catherine vanishes, Casey becomes consumed with finding out what happened to her. I gave this 3 stars. It was just okay to me. It was all right until out of nowhere there was something that shifts in the book. And I don't really want to spoil it, but if you don't want to be spoiled, you just skip a little bit ahead. But there's some like paranormal aspects that are introduced completely out of nowhere. There was no like foundation. I mean, there was a little tiny bit of foundation, but it didn't really go anywhere. So I just kind of hated that. But overall, I thought the book was fine up until that point. On to my December books. Started out with a cute romance, The Christmas Project by Maxine Mori. Professional organizer Kate is hired by her best friend to help organize her brother's house. Michael clearly needs the help to declutter his past. I give this 4 stars. It's a cute story about like misguided first meetings and them becoming friends and then eventually falling in love. It was pretty cute, but not anything that like blew my mind away. Then I read Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. After years of being assassins in a secret organization, the 4 60-year-old women are ready to retire. When they are set on an all-expenses-paid vacation, they start to notice they might be the new target and have to fight back when no one thinks they can do it at their age. I gave this 4 stars. Very adventurous, very fun to read. It would be cool if this became like a series because they kind of showed a little bit about their past, but they didn't really delve that much into it. And the characters are so unique and they all have their own personalities. It would be really cool to see this become like a series of all their past adventures. One thing I didn't particularly like is like I felt like they were just killing people with no abandon, but I guess they are assassins, so I guess that is to be expected. Then I read Never Let You Go by Chevy Stevens. 11 years ago, Lindsay escaped into the night with her young daughter and left an abusive relationship. Her ex-husband was sent to prison and Lindsay started over. Now Andrew is released and she starts to notice signs that seem to point that someone is following her. Is he the one who is following her? I gave this 4 stars because I really did like the story of Lindsay and her past and with her relationship with her daughter and her new like lease on life. But then like the reveal happened and I didn't really feel like it warranted the ending, I guess. It wasn't my particular favorite ending. Then I read The Matzo Ball by Jean Meltzer. Rachel is a nice Jewish girl who hides the fact that she's the author of Christmas romance books from everyone. When her publisher encourages her to write about her own culture, she struggles to find the inspiration needed until her old camp crush Jacob is hosting a huge Hanukkah event. 2 stars. I'm sorry. If you like this book, I'm really sorry for you because the writing was really bad to me. You know, it was an interesting way to look at Hanukkah because I don't celebrate Hanukkah. I don't, you know, I know a little bit about it, so I guess that was cool to learn about it. But the story was flat. there was a lot of plot holes. Like, they never really explained how her parents found out she wrote Christmas books. They kind of just threw that in the end. Her love interest and her were holding grudges since they were 12 years old. You know, do we hold grudges from 12 till 29? I don't think so. You know, they said that they were in love at 12 years old. No, you weren't. You had a little crush, you had a little camp crush. You know, it was just a lot of little stuff that was just like, no, I don't like this book. Only reason I finished is because my friend was reading it as well, and only reason she finished it was because of me. So we kind of mutually forced ourselves to finish this book we didn't like. You know, not for me. Then I read The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit by Michael Finkel. In 1986, Christopher Knight left his home and drove to Maine and disappeared into the forest. He would not have any conversations with anyone for nearly 3 decades until he was arrested for stealing food. The author examines how he survived, what he learned, and how he adjusted to regular life. I gave this 3.5 stars because I really did enjoy the look into someone's life who doesn't fit into like the normal life. And he willingly left society, didn't enjoy what society had to offer. So it was really interesting to see how he survived in the wilderness for so long. I didn't enjoy how the author kind of like butted his way into this story. So like he kind of like forced himself onto Christopher. He forced himself onto Christopher's family. He was kind of causing damage to like their relationships that they were building back up. So didn't like that. But overall, it was an interesting story. And then the last book of 2022 is Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 by Lisa Unger. 3 couples rent a luxury cabin in the woods for a weekend getaway to die for in this locked room thriller. I gave this 3 stars. There was a lot going on in this book. There was an unnecessary like host of the couples in his like Airbnb with a weird fascination of watching his guests like on secret cameras. And he had a love interest who was like weirdly okay with it. They never really fleshed all that out, so it just felt like very why is this happening? And then there was a DNA testing service that was very secondary, a deep look into the father of all the kids who are through that DNA service wasn't really provided either. The killer's motivation is kind of there, but their planning is very bad, and it's not believable because we're led to believe that the killer has done this before. I put killer in quotations because nobody died in this book. This is supposed to be a mystery thriller. Where are the deaths? I don't know. People got hurt, but nobody died. Not that I want people to die, but it is a thriller. It's a mystery thriller. I expected it. So I guess unexpected there. Yeah, but it was fine. So those are all the books I read in December, and I am done, I think, for the year. I'm filming this on 12/28, so there's a few days left in the year, but I'm pretty much busy those next few days, so I probably won't get any reading in. But I read 119 books this year. I wanted to get to 120. My original goal was only 75, so for the year my goal was 75. Way increased that to 119. My new goal was 120, but that's okay. I did 119 books in the year. Goal next year, 75 again. I think that's a good goal to have, just because working on a lot of different things next year, trying to be better in life, you know? So I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Let me know what you read this year, how many books you read, what your goal is for next year. If you have any recommendations, let me know. Next year, I'm going to try and do the ABC 1, 2, 3 challenge, which is basically read every letter of the alphabet and numbers through 9, I think. And then also doing a like diversify your reading challenge, so where you read different types of books. Because as you can tell, I mainly read like contemporary, romance, and thriller, and a little bit of nonfiction. So trying to mix that up a little bit next year and have some different genres in my life. Anyway, thank you again, and I'll see you guys next time. So I might have forgot a book. I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter as well. So that was the actual last book I read. I just hadn't updated my sheet that I put all my books in. So Better Than the Movies is about Liz and Wes and their next door neighbors. And it's their senior year. And Liz has a crush on one of Wes's friends. So she asks Wes to help her like hook that situation up. And they do, but she realizes she has more fun with Wes than she does with the guy she likes. So I gave this book 4 stars. Very cute story. It is kind of like YA, so it's not like super in-depth for me, but I really did enjoy the story, and there were a lot of like rom-com references, and you know I love a rom-com. So that was my actual last book, and apologies.